Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Dewey Chase. I'm the technical director for CMAHC, and we are glad you are carving some time out to be with us today. Summer is officially kicked off, or at least unofficially, after the Memorial Day weekend, and we're all in full swing for pool operations. As part of this is the opening of splash pads across the country, and that's going to be our theme today. As we discuss splash pads and to hear a very thoughtful presentation from our presenters today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please put your computers on mute, please. Only the host and speakers are desired to have their microphones on. As far as questions go, please put any questions into the chat. And we'll answer those towards the end of the presentation. We're anticipating the presentation today to take approximately 45 minutes, and we'll use approximately 15 for Q&A. But again, please enter those into the chat. For our presenters today, we have the pleasure of two wonderful individuals that are highly experienced in pool operations. And I just lost my intro. Where is it? Okay, here we go. So the first individual is Michael Debrecht. Michael has worked in park recreations for over 30 years. He's currently the assistant director with the city of Arlington, Texas, Parks and Recreation Department. Co-presenting with Michael today is Courtney Anderson. Courtney has 15 years of working with Arlington Parks and Rec. She's currently the aquatics manager. Her responsibilities include operating 6 outdoor pools, 1 indoor pool, and 4 splash pads. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael, because this is going to be a good one, folks. This will be a good one. Michael, feel free to share your screen and take it away, my friend.
All right, so first, can everybody hear me? All right, Dewey, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Let me do a little housekeeping here myself, shut my door before somebody starts screaming. All right, well, thanks for having us today, everyone. As Dewey said, my name is Michael Debrecht, Assistant Director. We're here to share with you an event that happened to us back in 2021, which has then become the Bakari Williams protocol. So with me today, so I'm off my screen here, is Courtney Anderson. As Dewey said, she's been with the department 15 years and currently oversees all of our aquatic facilities, and we're adding more every day. So she'll be chiming in from time to time as I make my mistakes through this presentation. Let's get there you go. And that's me. We've already talked about me, so we can move on. All right, so you heard about us. Let's talk a little bit about Arlington. So we sit smack dab in the middle of a large metroplex area where we have large cities, Fort Worth and Dallas, between us. We were known as kind of what used to be called a bedroom community, which is basically that's where you lived. Everywhere else you went to Fort Worth or Dallas to work and play and all that kind of fun stuff. So Arlington was just where you lived. But now we've grown tremendously, 99 square miles. We have the Dallas Cowboys, we have the Texas Rangers. We're building the National Medal of Honor Museum right here in Arlington. We have multiple Fortune 500 companies, Six Flags, which is a theme park, Hurricane Harbor, just a whole nine. So we're not a small town bedroom community anymore. We're a large city. And so take that into our Arlington area. So as I said, 99 square miles with 99 parks. We're actually up to 85 trail miles now. This is a couple-year-old presentation here, and then 48 park acres. Inside of that, we have 6 recreation centers. 2 are only 3 years old. 95 athletic fields, 4 golf courses. One of them is the only Major League Baseball franchise golf course in the country. So that's kind of exciting. And we have an award-winning tennis center through USTA. And then I'll let Courtney kind of talk about our aquatic facilities.
So our aquatic facilities include 2 family aquatic centers, 2 of which one has a lazy river, a slide, and a toddler play pool. The other one has a splash pad, toddler play pool, lap pool, 2 slides, and a diving well. We have 2 smaller community pools, both built in one was built in late 60s, early 70s, and one built in mid 80s. So 2 just normal community pools. We have 1 play pool, which is an 18-inch deep toddler play pool with a play structure in the middle. And then we have 1 indoor pool. We also partner with the school district here, Arlington ISD, and they have a competition style pool as well as a warm-up pool. So we program swim lessons and fitness classes out of that program, out of that location. And then we have 4 splash pads.
Thank you so much. With everything Scott has talked about, splash pads, kids around school, going to be very popular this week. We know that. But after a 3-year-old died from a brain-eating amoeba of all things last year after visiting a splash pad, the city of Arlington has made some decisive big changes. CBS 11's Brooke Rogers live at Don Misenhimer Park with what they have done there that will save lives in the end. That is certainly the hope. Brooke.
Absolutely, Doug. And it's a great way to cool off when temperatures soar. You can see the kiddos out here still at 5 o'clock enjoying the water feature. But one family's tragedy after a visit here is leading to changes in the city and potentially beyond.
A sweet, beautiful, innocent child. That's how 3-year-old Bakari Williams' parents described him. But a visit to his favorite Arlington splash pad last September proved deadly when he contracted a brain-eating amoeba and died.
The safety measures we had in place were all state code. Unfortunately, we found out that staff didn't do the follow-up.
The city settled a wrongful death lawsuit with the Williams family, alleging that Arlington failed to properly chlorinate and monitor the water. But this summer, they say parents can rest easy, thanks to the Bakari Williams protocol.
Every splash pad now in Arlington has a controller that can be monitored from anywhere that has an internet connection.
The $600,000 worth of improvements also include QR codes at all 11 aquatic locations, so visitors can ensure chlorine levels are safe, above 2 parts per million. They also added digital water testing machines and a state-of-the-art ultraviolet sanitation system. While the Williams family received $250,000, they say it was never about the money.
For us, this case has been about public awareness. With the positive changes that the city has agreed to make, we are confident that we have met our goals.
And Debrecht says they're using the cautionary tale for training around the country.
That's this legacy to me, is that it never happens again to another child anywhere.
Now, if you come out here and you're looking for those QR codes, right now you can find it on the door of the facilities, but they're going to be moved closer to the splash pads and the pools in the next week. Live in Arlington, Brooke Rogers, CBS 11 News.
Brooke, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so that's a very hard video to watch. I think I've seen it 20, 30 times myself, and it still puts in perspective of what we're all about, the safety of our kids. So back September 5th, 2021, was a Sunday, and I'm checking emails, and I find out that I get an email from one of our overnight beat officers of where this Don Misenhimer splash pad is. What had happened was overnight on a Saturday night, the child was taken into a hospital in Fort Worth, and the hospital obviously has to report that to CDC and all that kind of thing. But they didn't know how to contact us because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So they dialed 911, told them what happened, and our police officer sent me an email. So you can imagine at 10:30 Sunday morning, reading that email, it was shock. Didn't believe it. What's going on? You know, it's a chlorinated splash pad, the whole 9 yards. So from that moment on, We immediately shut down all of our splash pads. We had meetings for about a month with the CDC, Texas TCEQ, which is kind of the Texas version of CDC, our Tarrant County Health Department, our local health department, our water department, just any entity you can think of that has to do with water quality. And after testing of the splash pad, multiple water samples being sent from not only the splash pad, but the water towers in the area, the home of this child, just anywhere this child could have been over the past week. They took water samples from everywhere. And because of the DNA of this amoeba was matched to the DNA in the child, it was deemed that they got this from the Don Misenhimer splash pad. And so obviously city staff, that put us into a frenzy. Like, how did this happen? And we began our own investigation. So first thing we did was we had a third-party audit by Councilman Hunsaker, and they went through all our splash pads to say, hey, what are we doing wrong here? They didn't find really anything wrong. There's a couple of small violations where chemicals were a little close to each other, things of that nature, but nothing major. We also did a kind of an internal audit where I sent pool experts, electricians, carpenters, any trade you can think of, plumbers, all that, and said, we want to look at every aquatic facility we have, the ones that Courtney just described. So we went through each and every splash pad, and we found about $1 million worth of necessary improvements that need to be made, anywhere from building repairs all the way down to the pool features. So it encompassed the entire facility as a whole. But to focus on kind of what we're here for today, as we're in these pump rooms, you can imagine, if y'all run aquatic facilities, every aquatic facility we were in, all our pump rooms were different. We had different chlorinators, we had different controllers, we had different acid feeders, we had different, the way they were set up, tubing, just kind of all over the place. And so what we did is we sat there in November, we identified, branched all these out, made our priorities, and we implemented between November of 2021, actually more like January, because we had to get all the approvals, but until opening day of May of 2022, we improved $680,000 worth of improvements in our splash pads and our aquatic facilities. So it was a major undertaking to get back into where we felt safe to operate our aquatics programs. So, as I said, we walked in, we had different controllers, different test kits, different chlorinators, different sanitation systems, the whole 9 yards. And so one of the first things we focused on was making sure that each facility had the same high-tech quality stuff. So I did all my research. We're not here to sell anybody anything, but there's plenty of controllers to do exactly what I'm about to explain to you. But we want to make sure that you walk into an aquatic splash pad in Arlington and it's the same stuff everywhere. And so after doing all our research, we just have a local vendor that represents specs, and that's who we went with. Again, I'm not here to sell anybody anything. But what this did for us is we connected them all to our network and our internet. And so right now today, this is old obviously, but I can pull up on my computer. Courtney can, our aquatic technicians can. And so before I leave for the day, I can pull up this screen and say, okay, everything in blue's looking great. Anything in red, I have an issue. So now we save staff time, minutes versus hours to drive around to each aquatic facility to make sure it's running properly. So, we sit here, we click on the beacon, that's the first red dashboard, and we see everything that this controller is doing right now. Their ORP, their free chlorine, whether or not something's feeding up or down, the temperature of the water. We can literally see everything happening by sitting at my desk. And so this happened to be a no flow alarm that day. And so obviously without water, we need to go find out what's going on. And so each and every one of our facilities now we can track. All right, so in the state of Texas, I'm not sure where everybody is here, but the state of Texas, the crypto remediation system is by state law, it's code, it's up to code. What that is, it's a coagulant that is supposed to make smaller germs into bigger germs so it can get caught in the sand filter and flushed out. Well, the problem is if your sand filter isn't perfect and dirty sand can clump, it creates kind of imagine an ant farm where the ants are just going through the dirt. And so that's the same way the amoeba or germs or what have you can still go through the sand filter and not get flushed out the back. So it can stay in your system all the time. So we said, okay, that's not good enough for us. What else is out there? There's the ozone, which is basically, it's a pretty cool system. There are 3 oxygen molecules, and then as it's pumped into the water, the third molecule pops off and collects all those germs, and then you just have oxygen in your water. So that's a pretty cool system. And then you have the ultraviolet system where basically it's kind of frying the DNA in these germs to where the germ itself may stay in your system, but the DNA can't do anything to you, can't harm you. And so again, based on our region, cost effective, what we thought would do best for our systems, we put NSF certified ultraviolet systems in each and every one of our splash pads. So then our next step, too far. So then our next step was the good old, drop Taylor test kit. Everybody's used it for decades. I used it back when I was a lifeguard in the 90s. And so the only issue with that is most of you probably know, if you're in a pump room, you may not have the best lighting. If I'm doing 10 drops and I think it's the right color versus Courtney does 13 drops and she thinks it's the right color, your tests aren't all the same. So it could be free chlorine of 1 and it's really 0.5 or what have you. So that we wanted to take that human element out of it. So we investigated photometers. And so again, not here to sell anything, but they're all out there, the Taylor, the Vermont, Panel Test. And we just happened to go with the ones that were readily available in our area. And so that's what we also added to each and every one of our aquatic facilities. And so I'll let Courtney talk a little bit about the next steps.
So previous practice was each pump room had a binder. And so staff would go in, whether they were at the pool or at a splash pad, they would go in, do their Taylor test, and then record it on essentially a piece of paper that was printed and kept in this binder. At the end of the week, the binder was all scanned and sent over to the aquatics manager. So then the aquatics manager would be able to double check that pool tests were completed. Obviously, this ran into just some issues with it being in a wet atmosphere. We had records that you couldn't read, records that weren't like missing days where maybe pages had been removed from the binder or they got destroyed just being in a wet environment. So one of the things that we looked at doing was trying to prevent this from happening, trying to make it to where easier to where the manager, the aquatics manager and the aquatics techs were able to confirm that these tests were being checked and that these logs were being recorded in a timely fashion. And we were creating a firewall essentially to make sure that we are holding our staff accountable to do them.
So what we found out, if you take, I don't know how, this is hard to read, I understand, but this is literally the week that the child was at our splash pad. And so unfortunately staff went 3 times instead of daily like they were supposed to. And they registered things all the way as low as a 0.5. And obviously our SOP says we don't open unless we're within our legal range. And so when we saw this for the first time, it breaks your heart again that said, we screwed up, staff screwed up, we didn't do our job. So what Courtney is going to explain as we move forward is kind of the redundancies we put in place on the staff side so this would never happen again.
So one of the applications we did some research just on digital applications and a records retention program. One of the things we went with was a program called HydroWraps, and we will talk a little bit later about how we're using it to educate our public. But What this is each location was given an iPad. You can also access this, download this onto an iPhone or an Android phone, and it gives our techs as well as our pool managers at each of our locations the ability to digitally record their pool test. And so if you look over, I guess, on the left-hand side of the screen, that's what a pool test would look like. So they're able to go in, put in the time that they are taking the test, who is actually doing the one testing it, how many people are in the, either in the pool or on the splash pad at that time, everything that the controller is telling them. And then towards the bottom, you'll see where it says pH and free chlorine. That is what they're testing. So if they're using their Palin test, or for some reason they're using a backup as a tailored test, they are recording what they are manually testing. At the bottom of that, you'll see it's time stamped. So it tells you exactly when that test was completed, when it started and when it was completed, and the staff's name of who completed it. On the other benefit of this app is on the right side of your screen, you'll see where we were out of range. So pH is out of range and free chlorine is out of range. So this immediately prompts that person that's taking the test. You know, they're not just, especially at our pools where we're testing every 2 hours, they're not just getting into a habit of doing a test, writing it down and moving on. It's actually prompting them to say, hey, something's wrong, take a look at your pH, or something's going on with your chlorine, it's low. So it's actually prompting that person that's doing the test right then that they need to address something. It then gives them the opportunity to, if maybe they're not familiar with it or they're second guessing what they should do, it actually will give them a prompt to tell them what they need to add to the pool. So all of our pools and our splash pads are built into the system. So it actually will tell you with, you've got 11,000 gallons, how many pounds of soda ash you need to add, or how many pounds of muriatic acid you need to add, whatever the requirements are going to be. It's actually going to prompt them and take that guessing game and the math out of the equation for them. And so that's very beneficial to us, just because our pools are actually managed, our on-site managers of the pools are seasonal employees. So we're dealing with college students who their career is isn't in aquatics. And so this is a summer job for them. And so it's, again, holding them accountable, making sure that they are doing the test, but then also giving them some tools so that they are successful at their location. The other part of this is we can record everything. So this is truly a records retention program. So this is, for example, pool closure report. So anytime we've had a location close due to either be a mechanical issue, a FRI, or bad weather, we're able to record that and say that that pool was closed. And so that's, again, another firewall to show that, you know, we had something go out of range. For example, in this case, the acid feeder was overfeeding. So we closed that location until that repair could be made, or until we could get that water balanced up again. And so definitely is a firewall for us, just to make sure that we are tracking our records of what's happening. And then on the mechanical side of it and on the maintenance side of it, we then can pull these reports, you know, at the end of season to know, where did we have the most issues at? Where was the most closures at? And you can pull it based on water quality, you can pull it based on mechanical issues, or even weather. So this for on the lifeguarding side of it, this, again, it was 2022 is when we brought this system into our department, but we were still doing good old paper and a binder. So our incident reports, as a child was injured, you know, on the pool deck or stung by a bee, all of those were recorded on a paper form and then kept in a binder till the end of season. And then, of course, if you guys are in the aquatics industry, you know that those paper boxes end up in a basement somewhere, and probably you don't look at them unless it's required. However, in this case, we're able to do our instant injury or accident reports directly, again, on that iPad. this program collects it for us. So again, it's beneficial to us because I'm able to know if maybe this one lifeguard stand on this leisure pool, if this had the most saves out of the year. So maybe it's an opportunity for me to double up on a lifeguard or move that stand or make some adjustments just to our rotations. It also, as far as maintenance, if we have slips and falls in the restrooms, it gives me the opportunity to go to my maintenance team and say, hey, we're continuously having issues here. Maybe we look at resurfacing something or trying to be proactive just about our injuries versus being reactive. So, okay.
Okay, so our next step here was, we've done all these things. We've tried to take the human element out of it a little bit, upgraded all our systems, upgraded our management tools, all those kinds of things. The next thing was, how do we build trust in our community again? I don't want to send my child to a splash pad in Arlington because something might happen to me. So the goal was to figure out a way to let the community know everything going on with our splash pads at all times, basically. And so we started talking about different ways to do that. Is it like you go to Target and there's a grease board out there that says this was last checked at 2 o'clock and here were the chemicals? Or is it just something that we have an attendant on site to be able to show that when people ask? So what we did is we got with the hydro apps that Courtney was explaining and asked them if we could have a public page. And they kind of looked at us funny because that's never been asked of them. And so, it's do you really want the public to know what's going on behind the scenes kind of thing? And so we did, obviously. So what we did was created a QR code that goes to a public facing page in this hydro app system. And so when you go to a splash pad, you click on it or you scan your QR code here and you get this page right here. And so I can look at any aquatic facility real time of the last test taken manually. So in other words, this isn't back to that Bex controller. It's not connecting, telling them what the system's doing at all times. This is that manual state required test that every 2 hours at a pool and 3 to 4 hours recommended at a splash pad. And so whoever it was at our Allen Bolden pool went in at 6 o'clock, took the test, chlorine's at 3, pH is at 7.4. And so it immediately goes back to that dashboard. So here's kind of that back to what Courtney was explaining. So you have a tech at any one of our splash pads and they're doing all this. You hit save and close and immediately as a parent, I can say, oh, they just took that test at 2 o'clock at the Beacon Recreation Center or 12 o'clock. And they know that it's within range and it's free to, it's safe to go in there. This is also helpful for us. In the middle column, there's announcements. So back to those pool closures or like, for instance, our Brantley Henshaw splash pad's down right now. So that announcement would be in the middle of that saying, unfortunately, we have a valve issue at Brantley Henshaw, please come back tomorrow or what have you. So you could be talking to the public in this range as well. And then on the far right, it gives, most people probably don't know that it's 3 is okay free chlorine. So we kind of try to explain it on the right side here. What's good for pools and spas? What is free chlorine? And then if you click in the upper right-hand corner here, it then takes you to a page that talks about it in depth more, not necessarily scientifically, but it at least explains what is free chlorine, what is pH, why is it important, why is total alkalinity important. So it kind of gives those layman's verbiage of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so that helped us. We had many comments last summer about how just having this helped parents just be feeling good about going to our pools. So we feel like we were very successful in this. We actually, we just had opening weekend and we had a couple comments when we got back to work on Tuesday that, hey, I scanned my QR code to go to Don Misenhimer and it was great. So it's still being used today. All right, so the more to the story, right? So we've done our pump rooms, we're working on our management tools. But we also then have staff. We have both the seasonal staff that Courtney was talking about. We have our aquatic techs that take care of our facilities. We have our managers, our operations manager, our aquatics manager, even up to the assistant director level and the whole nine. So we've built a Bakari Williams, basically SOP on how are we going to keep this moving forward, right? You can do one thing one time, but how do we move forward? And I'll let Courtney speak to some of this stuff here.
So some of the things that we did is we're collaborating with our entire department. So unfortunately, I think because aquatics is looked at as a seasonal division, sometimes I feel like unintentionally it creates a silo. And so you have your aquatics team, and we have a much larger group that we can reach out to. So we started collaborating with our operations team. So 3 of our 4 splash pads are actually located in public parks. So we brought in those operations staff from those public parks and started working directly with those and started educating them on not just doing the pool test, but the ins and outs of all of their splash pads. Previously, the aquatics techs fell directly under the aquatics manager. And that actually we did a study back in
2012, I think it was.
2012. We did a study to where the techs were moved out from under our operations staff and put under our aquatics manager directly. Well, we went backwards on that study and we moved them back up underneath our operations staff. And what that did is that gave them more of a net to grab a hold of our carpenters, our mechanics, our plumbers, our irrigators, and pretty much put them in the operations team to where they have more people that they can lean on to work through any issues that they're having at any of our locations. Another part of that SOP is our procedures. And so like I said, our pools are tested every 2 hours prior to opening, and then during operation hours. And so part of the procedure is the staff, I'm immediately notified if a pool range is either via text from my staff, which we've kind of drilled this into them now to where they're on top of it and communicating it very quickly to us if they see something's going on. But I'm notified. So I'm notified directly by email that they have recorded something that's out of range. I also can have it set up to where I'm notified via text message. And so I can check it, know what's going on, get a maintenance tag, or advise if we need to close the pool or delay opening, any of those. We also are training. So everybody who comes in contact with any of our aquatics facility is trained with how to do a test. We actually have recreation managers who have recently, they hopefully will never have to step into any of our splash pads or our pools this summer because I think we're finally fully staffed. But they have the ability to, a Sunday afternoon, if we need to get a test done to make sure that that splash pad is safe, they have the ability to jump in and go do that. So we extended this training up to our entire department to where, again, we just have more people who have the ability and the knowledge to make sure that our splash pads and all of our aquatics facilities are safe. The other part of that was the public transparency. That was the public dashboard that Michael was talked about. Last part of this SOP is the presentations. And so we are wanting to share our story with anybody that we can come in contact with. So whether it is a location that has one splash pad, if it is pools, whatever we can do, we are wanting to, myself wanting to learn just more about how other aquatics divisions and departments across the country are doing it. But then we also want to share our story. So if this is something tragic that happened to us, and we want people to learn from our mistakes. And I've recently been informed that sometimes aquatics divisions tend to be the stepchild of parks and rec departments. We don't have enough funding. Our facilities are aging. And again, it goes back to that, we're a seasonal division, but we are definitely wanting to share how you can make this happen in your organization, where you can find the funding, or other ways that you can implement just some of these SOPs and just some of these firewalls, again, that we have in place to prevent this from happening.
So this is what Courtney was kind of talking about just a minute ago. So on the left-hand side is the way we used to be set up. You had your aquatic techs under the aquatics manager, who was under the community programs assistant director. And so to Courtney's point, it kind of created this silo. We're a city municipality, however, we're run by two different budgets. We have what's called a performance fund, which is basically like an enterprise program fund. Basically, you're going to raise the money in order to put back in your area, right? So if you run a pool, you better make enough money for your pool to run that pool. Same with the rec center. And then we have the general fund side, which is tax dollars, and that's under the operations assistant director. And so there was this, we can't fix this today because we don't have enough money back in those days, you know, and so we wanted to change that mentality. And so we moved these two aquatic techs under our operations side. And so to reiterate on what Courtney was talking about, now every day they're at a shop with an electrician, a carpenter, a playground tech, irrigators, landscape tech, all these things. And they can pull up that screen I showed you early on, and it says I have four problems, 5 problems, whatever it is. Not necessarily all those problems is an aquatic issue. It could be an electrician issue. It could be that no flow alarm, which all they'd have to go do is turn something back on. So now we have resources of all these people to say, hey, do me a favor, you go here, you go here, you go here, and we can get on top of our issues immediately. And so to add to that, we also wanted to make sure that people, they may not be in a pump room like Courtney said, but they had the knowledge. So we're training, we now are, I think we have about 15 CPOs in our system now. So this athletic manager over here, he runs the Beacon Recreation Center. And so he may not go in there and do tests, but he knows that in his recreation center, there's an outdoor splash pad. So he understands the chemistry and what we're doing behind the scenes. So if something's going wrong, he doesn't look at us and go, you guys are crazy. He understands that chemistry involved. And so like I said, this is an older presentation, but the operations manager is now CPO certified. We've added just a bunch of them so they have that knowledge. So back to that redundancy. Everybody who manually tests and puts it in the hydro apps, just like in the good old days of that binder, they all see the same screen every single time. So they walk into anywhere and do a test, they're looking at the same screen. Well, now you walk into any Arlington, Texas pump room, you're going to see the exact same thing. So if I have to ask a pool manager who's a seasonal employee to go to Brantley Hinshaw splash pad, they're going to walk in and they're going to see the same controller, the same Palin test kit, the same instructions on the back wall right here in detail. They're going to see, we have it down to the same cabinet. You're going to see the same cabinet. So they're comfortable. They walk in and they go, oh, okay. And so it doesn't matter who you are. If you're trained to test on our splash pads and pools, you can do it. And so these are some pictures of different ones. So this is on the left-hand side is at our Beacon Recreation Center and their splash pad. So same test kit, same this. The Taylor test as a backup, like Courtney was talking about earlier. Technology fails us sometimes, right? You put the vial in the deal and it gives you an error message. So okay, I now have the good old Taylor test kit as a backup to ensure that we have everything we need. On your right is California Lane splash pad, same cabinet, same controller, same Taylor test kit in the background. And then this is at Don Misenhimer, which you saw in the video earlier. Again, same cabinet, same Taylor test backup, same Palin test, and same controller on the wall. So everybody's comfortable no matter where they are in the city of Arlington. It's exactly the same moving forward. So we've literally been across the country giving this presentation, mostly to aquatic professionals. So there's a lot of lifeguard and pool in there, like Courtney was talking about. But before we open it up to anybody other questions, I'll ask your first question and give you the answer. This is the one we get everywhere. You know, we talked about $680,000 worth of improvement, and everybody always asks me, well, how did y'all do that? And so what we did is we just got creative. Our department, not our city, sets aside about $400,000 worth of capital maintenance repair every year. That could be a bridge in a park. That could be a fence, you know, at a recreation center. That could be anything. So I went to leadership. I was the operations manager at the time of this incident. And I went to our leadership and I said, give that to me for a year, 1 year. And they said, okay. And then I went to every department that had general fund tax dollars. And I said, set aside $25,000 and don't do something this year, whatever that is, build a fence, fix a field, whatever. And so each one of those, there's about 6 groups of that, and they each gave me a lump of money to where we were able to implement that $680,000 in less than 6 months. We were open by Memorial Day of 2022 after starting all this implementation in January. That took everybody on board. I had landscape techs out in pools vacuuming. I had carpenters fixing issues at splash pads. I mean, it was definitely a full department. So with that, the only other thing I'd like to say, and then I'll open it up to y'all's questions, is the other thing that this did in the SOP that Courtney talked about. It's not just her making sure that staff is taking those tests. We have written in policy how many times each level, all the way up to our director, is supposed to look at all those tests. So I don't have it in front of me, but like Courtney and the operations manager, it's daily. You know, the assistant director, it's weekly. Our director, it's monthly. So we've built those firewalls, those redundancies to make sure, again, that this never ever happens again. So with that, Dewey, I'll throw it back your way.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Courtney. Just as a reminder, please place any questions you have into chat, and we'll get those asked to our panelists ASAP. Michael, Courtney, I have a couple of questions on my end. And first off, you know, I really liked your approach to funding. That was a spectacular approach. And that's something that, you know, not only folks in Parks and Rec, but, you know, any organization that has multiple departments can probably learn from on their needs. That was very interesting approach. My first question, you know, for me is just going back to the amoeba, right? Where did was a source ever identified for where the amoeba came from?
So great question. This amoeba, typically it's found in stagnant warm water. That's why there's been 150 cases or so since 1950. So it's very rare. It usually happens in southern states, in lakes or stagnant rivers or streams or things like that. So what we found out was this amoeba can technically be in any body of water, okay? But it can't grow and thrive and become this dangerous thing unless you give it the environment to do that. So how it got in the water, we don't know. It could have come from wherever, someone brought it in, it could have come from a weird water supply, whatever. But where we failed is we gave it that environment to grow. We didn't kill it with chlorine, we didn't kill it with our secondary sanitation. We gave it the environment to grow. And so those tests with the CDC and our splash pad, it was like a 95% match of DNA that of the amoeba from the child and the amoeba at our splash pad identified those marks at 95%. The only way this amoeba can harm you is it has to be violently shoved through the nose. So imagine that stagnant lake, that stagnant creek, kids are jumping in and out of, right? And so those splashing going up your nose, well, look at a splash pad. That's all that stuff is, right? Is these jets having a great time with, and so that amoeba somehow got directly through the nose. If you drink it, if in any other way it enters your body, it doesn't harm you. So that's how rare this thing is. But no, to answer kind of your question, we don't know exactly where it came from. It just grew at Misenhimer.
Interesting stuff. What's been the community reaction? You touched on it briefly with one individual, but what's been the community reaction to the changes?
All in all, it's been all positive. We were transparent from day one. About a week after the incident, we hadn't even gotten the CDC fully. We were getting results kind of slowly, but it was on a daily basis. You could see that this was it. This was our fault. So from day one, our mayor was in the news and he's saying, we own it. We screwed up and we're going to fix it. And so I can't tell you how many interviews I did last year over at all the multiple channels, all the newspapers. So I think that's what gave our community a sense of safety, is we opened up and said, look at us. We posted every recording of our splash pads and our pools on our website from the previous year. So we were saying, look, we had 2 splash pads actually in the same boat where they weren't getting tested every day. And then we had 2 splash pads that were getting tested as they should. And so we showed it. This could have happened at either one of those other 2 splash pads. And so when we then turned around and said, okay, we screwed up, now we asked the media to come back and say, look what we've done to fix it. We've had nothing but positive reaction.
Right. Excellent. We just have one question that came in through chat, and is the amoeba chlorine resistant? Michael, if you're comfortable, we can let you answer that, or I can, either way.
Yeah, if you want to expound on it, Dewey, but basically, no, the chlorine will kill the amoeba. And I say kill it, it won't let it mature to the point where it hurts you. But that was the exact problem. Just to put it all in perspective again, that's the week that child came. We were there barely for 5 minutes probably, and he came. What we were told is it was that Thursday or Friday when he was there. Well, we didn't know what it was Thursday. It was 0.5 on a Friday, and overnight Saturday night, this child gets sick, and we find out Sunday. So at the end of the day, like I said before, we didn't have chlorine in the system. We didn't do our job. And Dewey, if you want to expound on that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. Yeah, so the amoeba, the technical name is Naegleria fowleri. It is not a chlorine resistant bug like Cryptosporidium. So it is relatively, we can say inactivated, we can say rendered harmless, right, with minimal levels of chlorine. I have one other question just as a follow-up. Obviously, the use of digital records is a key thing to the Bakari Williams protocol. what has been, and this is a larger conversation that's been had, right, on digital records across the country. What has been the health inspectors and city inspectors, right, that are checking the pools? What has been their reaction, if you can expand on that, on the use of digital records? Is that a novel thing for them? Were there any hiccups there from an inspector standpoint, to your knowledge?
So I'll answer. Yes, there was some hiccups. You know, they fully expected to walk into any of our aquatics facilities and see those records on hand. We've had to do just some education with them to show that we're able to pull it up. I mean, I can pull an entire month of pool test at any of our locations. I can pull it up on my phone, and it takes me less than a minute to actually pull up those records. And so we were able to show them, you know, we have a CPO on site during those inspections, and when they're coming out, and this, because of the Bakari Williams incident, they actually are they're doing a preseason inspection, and then they do a mid-season inspection as well. And so our code enforcement officers are coming out and doing it mid-season as well. Again, it's another firewall that's been put in place. But we're able to pull those records pretty quickly. There were some hiccups, and it did take some just educating them to say, look, this is better in the long run. You know, there's a lot of locations that we're trying to manage. We want to make sure that none of those locations fall through the cracks. And so being able to have that iPad at all of those locations and be able to pull it up directly and show it to them, that has been what's helped us. They actually also have the ability, the retention plan on Hydro Apps is 5 years. And so they have a bulk storage option. And so all of our data is saved for up to 5 years. After that, then it's moved on to our hard drive and in our network. So all of those digital records are saved there as well.
Excellent, excellent. One other question that came in, were the health inspectors inspecting the splash pads before the incident?
Yes, they were.
Just
Yeah,
I'll do a
you know,
follow-up on that one. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
it's that awkward snapshot in time, right? So let's say we're ready to go May 15th, we can get inspected. Well, when you first get all your chems balanced, whether at a pool or at a splash pad, everything's going to look perfect. But if you go back and you're not doing it on a daily basis, is where we got in trouble. So that's why they changed their SOP as well to say, okay, yeah, opening of the season, we're going to test it, but we're also coming back multiple times throughout the year. It was a lesson learned for them as well.
Was there inspection frequency before this incident?
Just once.
Okay.
Yeah, they would come out, they would check it, they'd give us our green light, so to speak, to say you can open, and then they never came back. And so this also changed the way they do things at other locations, not just with the city. I mentioned Hurricane Harbor, it's a water park that we have here. They do the same thing with them now. It's not just opening season. There's some other pools across the city that are, I don't know if they're HOA pools or what they are, but they've done the same thing with them as well.
Just as a reminder, any questions you have, please put those in chat. While we're waiting for any final questions to come in, just want to give a big thank you to Michael and Courtney for sharing this. This is really, really good stuff. And, you know, definitely, you know, yes, it took a tragedy for this to happen. And, you know, the loss of Bakari can never be offset by any sort of imagination. But the steps that the city took to make sure this never happened again, we're definitely extraordinary, and we're definitely is a model that, I think personally, all municipalities and every splash pad operator, right, public and private, should be looking at to elevate the game, so to speak, and to make sure that we're providing for the health and safety of our citizens across the country. So, again, thank you to Michael and Courtney. We're going to go ahead and close out the webinar as no other questions have coming in. If you have any follow-up questions, please shoot those over to cmac@cmac.org, and then we'll answer the questions, or we'll get you looped in to Michael and Courtney as possible. So again, Michael, Courtney, thank you for taking your time out. Courtney, especially you, as we're only a couple of days in the summer. Many thoughts to you on the many pools that you're having to handle now. So with that being said, thanks again, folks. We're glad everyone was able to make it, and we look forward to seeing y'all in our next webinar. Y'all have a wonderful day.